This Tegrity session is for Spanish 102 web-based courses. What we're going to be talking about today is what's called the present progressive tense. The present progressive tense in English is the verb to be plus a participle ing. So if you say things like I am skating, he is dancing, we are writing, he is talking, they are singing, etc. These are things that are progressing right now. What you're going to do to form the present progressive tense in Spanish, the first thing that you have to have is the verb to be. In Spanish, you're going to use the verb estar for your verb for to be, because a present progressive is an action, and actions are changing things. So we use the verb estar instead of the verb ser. Estar, as a quick review, is conjugated estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, and están. Alright, this is the way you're going to get I am, you are, he or she is, or it can be you are in the formal, we are, you all are, they are, or this can also be you all are. Alright, to get an ing of a verb, what you're going to do is, if you have an AR verb, you drop the AR and you add the letters ANDO. So if you want to say working, you take the verb trabajar and it becomes trabajando. Or you take the verb comprar and it becomes comprando. You can take the verb bailar and it becomes bailando. So what you want to do, if you take any of these that are up here, let me take this off so I'll have some space to write. You can take any of these forms of the verb estar and a progressive and create a sentence. So if you want to say I am dancing, then you would say estoy bailando. Estoy meaning I am, bailando dancing. If you say we are studying, it would be estamos for we are. Studying would be estudiando. We took the verb estudiar, we took off the AR and we added ANDO. Alright, estudiando. Or if you say she is working, you would say está trabajando. Okay, so AR verbs end in ANDO when you want to make them progressive. Okay, let's talk about ER and IR verbs. The same thing. You're going to drop the ER or the IR, and you're going to add the letters IENDO. So if you want to say eating, comer is to eat, so eating would be comiendo. Vivir is to live, so you have viviendo. Escribir would be escribiendo. Let's take another ER. If you take the verb aprender, to learn, it would be aprendiendo. So the same thing when you want to put these in sentences. If you want to say, I am not learning, your sentence would be, no estoy aprendiendo. If you're going to say, they are living in Decatur, you would say, están viviendo en Decatur. Alright, let's talk a little bit about what are called irregular participles. Alright? Irregular participles are words that do not follow the ANDO or IENDO rule. And there are a few of them. They are listed on page 166 in the Vista's 3rd edition book. Let's take, for example, the verbs leer, creer, and oír. This is to read, this is to think, or to believe, and this one is to hear. Alright, so let's take what we just learned a few minutes ago. If you take off the ER of this verb and you add IENDO, the same thing with this one. IENDO, and then take off this one, it would be OIENDO. Because you take off the IR, you've got left as the O. Alright, when you have this situation in Spanish, and this is going to apply to other verb tenses in the future, so it's a good clue or a good thing to remember, is that when you've got 3 vowels side by side, and the middle one is the letter I. So in this one we have E-I-E, E-I-E, and then O-I-E. And the middle one is the letter I in Spanish to make the word more pronounceable. Because, you know, in Spanish you have to pronounce every single vowel. So to pronounce this, it would be le-iendo, cre-iendo, o-iendo. So to make it more pronounceable, what you do is you change the letter I to the letter Y in each case. So this one now would become leyendo. It's easier to pronounce. Creyendo for thinking or believing, and oyendo for hearing. Leyendo, creyendo, and oyendo. And these are not all of them that'll do that. But if you just remember that as a good rule, that if you have the letter I in a 3-vowel series in the middle, you need to change the letter I to a Y. And again, this is going to come into play when you learn another tense called the preterite tense. In Spanish, we're going to be changing the I's to the Y's again if there are 3. Alright, another thing that changes are stem changing verbs that end in IR. You get the verb preferir. It's usually an E to IE. You've got the verb conseguir, which is usually an E to an I, and you've got the verb dormir, which is usually an O to UE. But when you have it in the present progressive, this one becomes an E to I, This one stays an E to I, and this one becomes an O to U. So if you want to say preferring, then you're going to say prefiriendo. If you want to say getting or obtaining, it's going to be consiguiendo. And if you want to say sleeping, it's going to be durmiendo. So that O changes to an U, that E changes to an I. Oops, that E right there changes to an I. And these are just some little spelling change rules, I guess, or little peeky spelling change rules. But for the majority of the verbs that you'll be using, you're going to follow that AR, ANDO, A-N-D-O, and the ER and IR, I-E-N-D-O rule. These are probably, leer is probably another one of the more common ones that have a spelling change. Durmiendo probably, that's another one that's more common. But these are just some of the irregulars that follow in the present progressive.